Hi everybody, it's Leela from Miss Kiss Creations. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video, I'm going to show you how to make the white melted candle tumbler. If you haven't already seen my black and white glittered melted candle tumbler, it will be listed in my description below. These tumblers are so easy to create, so let's go ahead and get started on this tutorial. I'm starting with a 20-ounce skinny stainless steel tumbler from Maker Flow Crafts. I sanded this tumbler down with a 180 grit sanding block, and then I wiped it down with 91% alcohol. I have my glue stick here. This is how we're going to create the flames. If you did see my other black flame candle tutorial, you know that I have a mini glue stick. I will say the bigger glue stick is a lifesaver. I will put the link in my description below. It makes those drips just a lot easier, and you don't have to strain your hands as much, especially if you are doing these in bulk. I'm using clear glue. I'm not using any color, so I just purchased this from Amazon as well. So these drips on your tumbler are super easy. I'm going in with my hot glue, and I am just kind of placing the hot glue towards the rim or the top of the tumbler. And I'm letting it go wherever it goes. I'm not too worried about getting a straight line. I'm just making a good base of where those drips may be. Once I have it on the tumbler, I take my my heat gun, and I just apply a little bit of heat around it, and that just allows the glue to heat up some. And if it starts to drip, then let it drip. If it doesn't, then that's okay. We'll add more glue here in a minute. I like to place my heat gun close to the tumbler so I can pop any bubbles that may have created on the glue. So now you see a little bit of the drip starting to form on the tumbler. The glue is still hot because you added the heat. So I'm going to go in with more glue and just place it and kind of start like a drip. So I'm just pulling it right down that tumbler just like that. So what I do, trying to show y'all and still do it in the camera, you have to keep your tumbler kind of upright, because if you don't, then your drips are going to go with gravity. So if I do this, it's going to go down the tumbler. So again, bring some glue across and just make that drip go down and then back up. And then you'll have your little drip. So you just do this randomly around the tumbler until you are satisfied. Just like so. So you just go across and then you just drip. It's going to look a little awkward at first because you're just putting hot glue on a tumbler, but once it comes together, it does look really nice and it looks like a melted candle. So I just am adding random drips to the tumbler. I'm adding them next to each other. I don't really think about where I add them, because when I start thinking, that's when I start messing up my tumblers. So I'm going to fast forward through this part, and then I'll move on with the next step. I have my first layer of drips on my tumbler, and it is still wet. It has not completely dried, so I'm going to sit this to the side for about 10 minutes, and my hot glue should be completely dried. I will say these little stringies on your tumbler, whenever your tumbler cools down, because it is a little hot from adding the hot glue and the heat gun, but once it cools down and once these glue drips dry, all you do is you just kind of move them around with your finger and they come right off. So don't mind those in the beginning. I wait until this tumbler is completely finished, and then I start cleaning up those little stringy glue sticks. So I'm going to let this dry, and then I'll see y'all in about 10 minutes. My drips are dried on my tumbler, and now I will go in with another layer of drips with my hot glue gun. I'm doing the same thing. I'm just adding the drips over the already drips. So I'm not really thinking again about these drips. I'm just placing them wherever a spot is available for a drip. I like to fill in the top with the hot glue just to make sure that I will have it sealed. And this glue, I can see the steam coming off this glue. And here are my new drips over the old drips. Going to add some more on this side. Just carry it down and have it come back up. And like I always tell y'all, make this tumbler your own. If you want to add less drips or more drips, whichever you prefer, create what you want to create. And then I'm going to take my heat gun and just add some heat to my tumbler. You can see this heated up so much that it dripped towards the bottom there. I'm going to just let that dry and then we can just peel that right up. All right, I think I am satisfied with my drips. I'm not going to flip it and show y'all just yet because my drips are still a little wet. So I don't want them going left to right on the tumbler. I'm going to go around the tumbler and kind of peel up some of those stringies from that glue gun. So all I'm doing is just peeling them right up by just rubbing on them with my fingertips. Very simple. And I do have a little piece of glue here sticking up. I'll take an X-Acto knife and just X-Acto knife that right off of the tumbler. It's simple as that. It comes right off. I think I'm satisfied with my drips on my tumbler. You can see that my glue is still clear, so it still needs to dry. I let this sit, like I said, another 10 to 15 minutes. I do have another tumbler here that the drips are completely dry, and you can see the glue is more foggy. So what I will be doing next is I will be spray painting this tumbler with a white spray paint. I do have my flat white. I do recommend flat white only because epoxy sticks better to it, but if you do have satin or gloss on hand, that is completely fine. I have used satin or gloss as well. Before I spray paint it with my tumbler, I'm going to go in with a 91% alcohol cloth or wet paper towel and just wipe it down with 91% alcohol. The reason why I'm doing this is so if any oils or anything that may have transferred to the tumbler that epoxy might repel on, the 91% alcohol gets rid of that. So I know I've already wiped it down once with 91% alcohol, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. All right, my tumbler's now wiped down. I'm going to go outside and spray this with white spray paint and see y'all whenever this tumbler is dried. I'm back with my tumbler and I have spray painted it, and the spray paint is completely dry. I'm sorry that I did not mention earlier, but obviously you are going to spray paint the entire tumbler, including those drips. I did have to put about 2 to 3 coats of spray paint over the drips. So just keep that in mind. Make sure you're not doing consistent coats of spray paint. Make sure you are spray painting, letting it dry, and then spray painting it again, or your spray paint is going to start cracking like mine did up here, but you can hardly notice. Once my spray paint is on my tumbler and it is dry, the next thing we'll be doing is adding that decal. I am using a decal that I found from Etsy. I would post the link, but it looks like the place that I purchased this from is currently closed down. But if you go to Etsy.com and type in Black Flame Candle Company or Black Flame Candle SVG, you'll see these files pop up all over Etsy, and there's multiple options for them. My Waterslide paper will be posted in my description below. I do purchase that from Amazon. And I believe I made my water slide about 4 inches by 3 inches. So 4 inches long and 3 inches wide. So what I'm doing now is I'm just applying some water to my tumbler. It just gives me a good base for my water slide, and I let my water slide sit in the paper for about 30 seconds to a minute. I do seal my water slides with my Rustoleum crystal clear enamel. This is the only stuff I use for my water slides. I've recently changed to this and I absolutely love it. I spray about 2 to 3 generous coats of this sealer on my water slide. If you want to use clear spray paint, you can use that, or if you have your own sealer on hand, use that as well. Whatever works for you. So what I'm doing now is I'm just seeing if the water slide is going to release from the backing. If it doesn't release without having to really pull from it, so it isn't, so I'm just going to let it sit in the water for a couple more seconds. And it looks like the backing is releasing from that water slide paper. You could see it's releasing very easily. That's what you want. You want it to slide right off that paper. I'm just placing this on an area where the drips aren't too far down, since this is a bigger decal for this tumbler. I want it to take up most of the space. And then before I start drying my water slide, I put my tumbler right side up and I kind of eyeball the position to make that decal straight. I'll be going in with my silicone brush to kind of fan out any of those air bubbles or those little water bubbles underneath that water slide paper. Once I'm finished with that, I take just a napkin. You can also take your craft towel, and I'm just blotting around that water slide. This just makes sure that the water slide is nice and secure on the cup, and it dries it a little quicker than just waiting for it to dry. You don't want to smear this on. You don't want to rub this dry. You want to basically pat it dry, because this water slide paper is still a little fragile. It is sealed, but it can really tear and crinkle very easily if you aren't too careful with just blotting your water slide paper. And I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but the printer that I have is from Walmart. It cost me about $25 to $30. It's the Canon MG2522. So I don't have some fancy printer. I just have the basic printer. I've had it for about 3 years and it's done me well. It looks like my water slide is completely on the tumbler. It is just as dry as it can be as of now. So I'm going to let this sit for about 10 minutes to let this water slide completely dry, and then we'll move on with that next step. Welcome back, everybody. My water slide is completely dried. If I do sound funny, it's because I have my respirator mask on. My next step will be adding the epoxy to the tumbler. I did not spray any sealer over this again. I just let my water slide decal completely dry on the tumbler. I will be going in with some brown alcohol ink from Holtz. I have two colors here. I have caramel and ginger. I know they make a lot of different brown shades, so use whichever shade you have on hand. I'm going to first add my caramel and my epoxy and just add about 3 drops of the caramel and then stir the alcohol ink with the epoxy. This is going to create that brown effect, that realistic looking candle. Do keep in mind this part is optional, so if you do want to keep your tumbler white, then just keep your tumbler white. I'm going to add some to my tumbler. I just want to make sure I have the right color. I don't want it looking too yellow. I want it to look more brown, like the candle. So I'm going for like a light brown, almost tan look, and not like a bright yellow color. I want it to be a little bit more brown, so I'm going to add Teekwood by Holtz, and I'll be adding only 1 drop of that alcohol ink to the epoxy. I'd rather add a little bit less than more, because you can always add more. And now add it onto my tumbler just like I would any other tumbler. I'm not really focusing on the drips too much as of now. I want to make sure that my tumbler is completely covered at the bottom, and then I'll go in up the top to add the epoxy to the drips. And this is the color that I was looking for. Again, this is completely up to y'all. This is optional. If you want to keep your tumbler white, if you want it darker, if you want it lighter, create your tumbler the way that you want to see it and the way that you picture it in your mind. Whenever you're adding the epoxy to the drips, you don't want to add too much epoxy where it kind of pools between the drips. So what I'm doing is I'm adding a heaping amount of epoxy at first, and then I'm kind of rubbing the epoxy away so it doesn't pool like a lot between the 2 drips. You want some pooling because I like the effect of it darker in this area where the drips are, but you don't want a lot of epoxy kind of stacked in one area. Don't forget to do the bottom, and then finish up the tumbler all around. Once I'm finished applying my epoxy to my tumbler, I'm going to allow my tumbler to spin on the cup turner for about 4 to 6 hours. After 4 to 6 hours, I'm going to turn off my cup turner and then let my cup air dry or air cure for another 18 to 20 hours. I want a total drying time or curing time of my epoxy for at least 24 hours before my tumbler is finished. Once my tumbler is finished curing, what I do is I clean up the inside and the edge of my tumbler. If you do need assistance with that, I will post my help video in my description below. And don't forget, I have a lot more beginner help tutorials in my description. Now that I have all of my epoxy on my tumbler, I'll see y'all in about 24 hours when my tumbler is completely cured. Welcome back, everybody. My tumbler's epoxy is completely cured, and guys, this one is so adorable. I love how that alcohol ink stays up top with that wax. It makes it look really realistic, and you could see those edges on that water slide disappeared. These are going to be a huge hit this Halloween, so y'all better start making them. Like I mentioned earlier, the only thing I have to do is clean up the inside of the tumbler and the rim. Check out my video in the description below with assistance with that. I hope y'all enjoyed this video, and if you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more tumbler and craft videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.